I'm here chewing the fat with Drea Clark. How's it going, Drea Clark?
Oh, it's going. Chewing, happening, masticating. It's all happening.
Masticating is one of those words that I have always been particularly drawn to. Uh, it's like one of those words that people hate that I love, like moist.
Oh, who could hate masticating? That's a great one.
I remember when I first learned what that meant in high school, and I feel like I used that word it was like a word of the day calendar thing where
Yeah.
I'd be like, how can I fit masticating into 10 sentences today and make
Uh,
my high school classmates feel inferior?
yeah. Well, I mean, that's the real key. I love words. I've been reading a lot of scripts recently, and
I'm so
um,
sorry.
I know it's for my hobby as a producer. But some screenwriter used the word truculently, and I started like fanning
Ooh,
myself. I was like, "Oh, hey there,
truculently. That's
hey,
sexy.
hey there, soldier." I just anyone that's using something that I haven't read 1,000 times, I was like, "Yeah." And then I had that full on vocab thing where, because I am a pretty avid reader,
Mhm.
and there is a large amount of language that I'm very comfortable reading, using in written communications, but I'm fairly certain I don't know how to pronounce correctly. And I don't know it until I get to that word. Like, I'm like, oh, you know what would go well right now? I'm not going to use it because nobody wants to be the idiot using a fancy word. It's like Versace, right? In
Yes.
Showgirls.
Yes.
Like, I don't want to be Versacing my way through impressive vocab.
But wait, were you a spelling bee kid at all?
We didn't have that, or I would have been. And related to today's conversation, one of the films that I programmed at Bentonville this year is a documentary called Speak, which is about
I've heard about that.
like forensic oration competitions.
Right.
And two of the subjects were from Minnesota, which is where I'm from. And I'm like, oh dang, if this had been around when I was in school or at my school, you all wouldn't have been able to tell me nothing. There's no way I wouldn't have gotten hog wild with oration competition. Get
Yeah.
out of here.
Spelling bees were basically the
Yeah,
only
we didn't
thing
have,
we had growing up in Alabama. So we didn't have like a speech and debate team or forensics or
yeah.
anything like that. And I was pretty dominant from second to fourth grade, but there was a very steep drop off after fourth grade where I couldn't even compete anymore. And I just was like, well, if I'm not going to win, what's the point?
Ah, the American dream. If
That's
I'm
right.
not going to win, what's the point?
What's the point? I
Yeah.
mean, that isn't that kind of the world we're living in right now? Isn't that the motto of today's
Yes.
world?
Yeah, yeah. I'm hearing this, and actually, spelling bee would be kind of a fun birthday theme. I'm just saying.
I mean, you're not wrong. And
I'm
I
just
mean,
saying. Like the nerds we know, you think I don't know people who would roll up like gangbusters and be like, "Where do I sign up? What kind of round robin? What's the bracket situation in this thing?"
if you go to theater night at Tiki No in North Hollywood, you'll hear at least two people singing songs from the 25th annual Putnam County Spelling Bee. So
Oh.
that could probably tide you over until you can actually participate in one of those adult spelling bees, which are a real thing.
Yeah. You say this. My birthday's in January. Look out for an invite.
My
Just
birthday is
maybe,
also in January, so maybe you look out for an invite.
oh, well, okay, maybe I will.
Maybe I will. Well, you mentioned, and so I realized when doing this, and again, thank you for joining me, Drea. You always kick off every endeavor I do to some degree or another. And I realize that I know so little
Oh,
about your past. I mean, other than you're a film person and you're from Minnesota, and I know all of this, but there's a lot of shades in there that I don't really we don't really get to talk about a lot on those 11 and a half hour screen drafts recordings that we do so regularly and have one coming up soon. So I'm just curious, maybe talk to me, an Alabama neophyte, about
mm.
what it was like growing up in the great state of Minnesota, a state I used to visit once a year every summer to see my relatives in Red Wings. So quite familiar
Oh
with
yeah.
that area of Minnesota.
Southern. Well, mid-Southern. My best friends own an incredible toy store in Kellogg, Minnesota, which is just like
Oh.
30 minutes south of Red Wing, called Lark Toys. It's like a 20,000 square foot independent toy store. It has a hand-carved carousel. If you're ever in the area, check it out. Ask for Scott and Miranda. But I also, you know what my takeaway here is, Billy Ray? I'm going to pretend what you're saying is, Drea, you're so mysterious. People are always
Yes.
talking about just, oh, what an elegant, mysterious
That's right.
woman.
That's right.
And good, which is all, those are the descriptors I'm looking for. And I'm also laughing that I work Minnesota into every conversation, whether I try or not. So you're like, I got that. I got that part. Don't you worry.
Well, you also have to accept that you've become on the level of a Madonna or a Cher
Oh,
in that
yeah.
you don't even need your last name. Like maybe for a while there, Drea De Matteo had some sort of like popular recognition, but now nobody knows what she's up to. So now it's when someone says Drea, they just naturally say, "Oh, it's Drea Clark."
Fun fact, I'm friends with her, or was, I mean, I'm acquaintance friends with her. And so we always called her Drea, not Clark, and I'm Drea, not Mateo. I do know what she's up to, and don't you worry about it. I'll take the singular, I'll be the Drea. Yeah, I'm from the Midwest. I'm from Minnesota, which is a real point of pride.
Mhm.
I grew up in St. Paul, graduated high school in White Bear Lake, go Bears. But I went to school in Wisconsin, so I'm a rare Minnesota Wisconsin hybrid that like is deeply affectionate for Wiscos. There's a rivalry there. I think if I cared more about football or at all, I might be more, divisive between states. But yeah, I'm a Minnesotan girl. My whole family's from Nebraska. Got the Midwest on lock. And so yeah, I moved out to Los Angeles right after graduating from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. And like many people was like, I studied film and was like, oh yeah, I want to do something with film and I'm not going to live in the snow anymore. So no New York for me. So I came here and almost immediately, because I befriended someone who had an internship at Slam Dance, got myself an internship at Slam Dance and was like, what's a film festival? And so, yeah, so I've been a festival bitch for like over 25 years, which is insane to me. And but I loved it. I worked at a summer camp for 7 years back in the Midwest,
Yep.
which rings true in every part of my personality. And film festivals are very summer camp environment. It's like
Oh,
film, discovery, it's so many things that I love. And so it was a good fit for me. And I hadn't realized it. I'd been programming in Wisconsin. We just didn't call it that. We just called it pickin' movies for
yeah.
the like art house theater within our student
We
union.
called it "What You Getting from Blockbuster."
Um, well, we showed like Mary Jane isn't a virgin anymore, and the director came out. Like, so we had some things. We showed kids, and I had more people ask for refunds for that than anything else I played. And I get it. But so yeah, so came out to LA, was like, oh, I enjoy, and found that what I liked is programming and producing. And so the producing side of things, I started in music video and worked in that forever, which is why a lot of like my film friends are also like originally were music video creators. And then yeah, so I was at Slam Dance for like 19 years total. I ran feature narrative programming for 13. I was the festival director for 3. I was at LA Film Festival as a programmer for 11 years and was senior
Which
programmer.
is how we met.
That's how we met. Yep.
Yep.
I was senior programmer and head of filmmaker relations for the last 5 or 6. And then I've been at Sundance the last 9 years. And then I've also been programming Bentonville Film Festival, which was founded by Gina Davis, takes place in Arkansas. I've been with them since their second year. So I've done every festival but one. I was the film curator my first 8 years, and the last 2 I've been the artistic director. So yeah, festival side, it's a nice smattering of things. A lot of people who do festivals like yourself, like we do more than one. So
Right. Well, I
yeah.
mean, we all do more than one. I don't know that anybody has to watch as many films per year as you.
Oh, true.
Um,
Yeah, yeah.
Between all of that and just for Independent Spirit
Well, I
Awards,
was just gonna say right, and I've been a film independent. I was the producer in residence for like 11 years or something, and I've been the nominations producer for the Spirit Awards for the last 5 or 6. So yeah, I watch hundreds of films that come in through that. Oh no, when we, I mean, and because you and I, like with screen drafts, are the two people that are always regularly dragged in for like the best of the year.
Right.
And part of it's I'm like, try me,
Same, same.
find a film I haven't seen. Because also I have a weekly movie podcast, so
Right.
I have to see all the new stuff for that.
I
Yeah,
feel like I feel like you've always seen. I feel like I come into one of those drafts having seen like 350 movies a year, and I feel like you've
so
seen.
many.
Yeah, but I feel like that's not even close to how many you see.
No, that's like half of what I see.
Yeah, and so it's like I come in with a lot of confidence, but only to a certain extent because I know that regardless of how many movies I see, I am bested.
Well, that you say that, and yet you balance out whatever lack of confidence with full on, full bodied blustering.
Well, that's just how
So
I
it,
learned in the
yeah,
Deep South. I mean, you it's the Billy Ray Cyrus technique, right? You might have a shitty song like Achy Breaky Heart, but if you throw your hips into it, it can be a #1 hit.
oh my God.
Um,
I can't wait. Hold on. Let me text everyone that we know so I can say you just compared yourself to Billy Ray Cyrus.
everybody's been doing it my whole life. I might as well jump on the bandwagon.
That's fair.
I'm curious because, we've talked about this loosely before because I am also a summer camp kid. I was a camper for 8 years and a counselor for 8 years at the same camp. So I grew up
Me too.
and it's some of my, if you were to ask me my top 10 favorite memories in life, half would be from Camp Ocoee, just straight across the board. And so I'm curious because, our camp was a true traditional sleepaway camp, right?
Me too.
Like, yeah. So we would go for the full summer. And, I certainly loved my experiences as a camper, but my experiences as a counselor were just like off the chart. And so I'm just wondering, like, was the camp that like what was the camp that you called your home camp, and what was the activity that you most enjoyed leading?
Okay. First off, I'm furious that more people don't ask me about camp, so God bless you.
Yep.
It's my favorite thing to talk about, and weirdly, nobody wants to talk about it. So I went to Camp St. Croix, YMCA
Mhm.
Camp St. Croix in Hudson, Wisconsin, and I was a camper there as well from like the age of 8 to 16, and then I worked there from like 16 to 22 or whatever.
Yep.
I adored it, but I loved camps in general. So I would go to like, well, also my parents both worked full time. So I thought like, oh, I'm so spoiled. And they were like, oh, thank God someone's watching this kid and she's not home and bugging us. But I went to like 3 camps a year. So like I also went to at least one Lutheran camp a year because I
Uh,
grew up Lutheran. No, all of the other camps were definitely Lutheran. So it was like Lutherdale, Luther Crest, Camp Castaway, like you got
yes.
if it was Lutheran, I probably went to it. Um, but Camp St. Croix, I loved. It was also like in my head because that's the gold standard of like, oh, that's what a summer camp is, and everything else is like, oh, you're doing it weird
Right.
because I was so
Right.
ingrained in it. But ours was a sleepaway camp. There was a day camp component, but I never had anything to do with that. And so it was sleepaway. You went for the whole summer. Well, no, it was open for the whole summer. So the staff was campers were there for 1 or 2 weeks. And
Correct.
so,
Correct.
yeah,
Yeah.
so we did because East Coast ones are wild. East Coast camps are like, oh, you live here now.
Well, ours was
But
sort of a mix. Like you could do a 1 week trek or you could do a 2 week trek, but then we also had what we called the adventure track, which
mm,
was a full summer long thing. So you would do, and it would be
oh, okay.
broken up. And so we did have that option, but it was only one. So if you did that trek, it was just that group for the whole summer. And so it was a little higher priced, and
Okay. Yeah.
they did a lot more like adventurous stuff because it was the older kids. So it was a lot more of the rapids and,
Okay.
whitewater rafting and like all of that stuff. And that we got to do, but just at a more minor level.
Oh my God, I'm so excited you're saying this. So yeah, we were very serious about camping. Like, so it was our prime divisions were either sailing or canoeing, but we also had a backpacking group and then horse group. So
Right.
we had like an equestrian center, but we also had wrangler and like horses on site. So those were the main areas, but the bulk of them were canoeing or sailing. But even our sailing groups camped. So we had like a 52-foot
Right.
Nicholson on Lake Superior, which is basically a sea. And so you would sail the Apostle Islands and you'd sort of go in on the tender every day and you'd camp or on like you'd sleep on the islands and hike around and then go back and
Right.
sail somewhere else, whatever. So we were very like it was I didn't realize, but it was relatively like it's we taught minimum impact camping, pack it in, pack it out. Like it was very so when I didn't even and my family wasn't camping people. And so I didn't really realize like when I moved to LA and I went like for camping for like friends for the weekend, I did not know there were campsites you could drive up to. I had
Yeah.
never been camping with a cooler. I was like, what is happening? Like I'm used to stuff like that you have to portage and I'm carrying everything for 10 days or whatever. And anyway, so the that was the thing of it. And because we held that, and we also called like anybody that we would see like on the river or something with like a radio, we'd be like, oh, these Watuki campers, which is honestly probably a slur, but like
Yeah.
was just the word we used for like people who were like bougie camping. Cause you have to be a little miserable. Like we wore a trail t-shirt and you wore your trail shirt every
Right.
day and you like dried your dishes in it. Like it was, you came off trail. It
Yeah.
were just the most disgusting beast and then you're the best shower of your life. But I loved it. I did all tracks. I did like and separately from this, but I did like an outward bound backpacking thing. Like
Yeah.
I did a little of all of them. But the reason that I was staffed so early in the your last question of like what do I miss the most? I was hired as a counselor at 16, which you weren't supposed to be because I
Right.
finished basically our CIT training, but I was a young woman who knew how to sail and they needed a sailing counselor. So I
Yeah.
was hired at 16. I had 14-year-old campers 2 days later, like, and just lied about my age to them. I was in charge of 10 children on the river in a keel boat, like for five
You are
days or something.
you are
I,
speaking so much of my language right
yeah,
now. I too started counseling when I was 16 and
yeah.
for very similar reasons. And it wasn't because I could sail, it was that I was the only one of the only ones who had a boating license because you were able then to get them super young in Alabama. And so I had my boating license. And so it was very similar. So I would drive the banana boat and
We
oh
didn't,
yeah,
that was Watuki.
because
I wish we
I
had a
was
banana boat.
I was also a YMCA Camp Ocoee.
Mm,
And so yeah, I would do the banana boat and then I tried to mix it up every year, because we had a lot of different activities, apart from like canoeing and kayaking, which were like the two
yeah,
big ones, but like, archery and
yep.
riflery and nature and for
Oh, yeah.
several years I did the drama club as well at camp. So we would do like the big campfire skits every year and like high ropes course and wall
We had that.
climbing
We
and
had
like
all of that. Oh my
yeah,
gosh. We were at the
it
same
was
camp.
yeah, it was all of it. And then you had to be very careful about the or the black bears that were always
Yeah.
roaming around. And I just, so many amazing memories. Like I still, I still remember so much of it like it was yesterday. And I'm curious to you, do you do anything to zhuzh up your gorp recipe?
Oh my gosh, I haven't had Gorp for so long. What a loss. I will say I still crave. So there were always two trail room directors, and it was like a secret recipe for the granola they made on site, and it was the best granola in the whole world. And
Yeah.
I to this day would like, oh, I would harm somebody for that. I'm a pretty straightforward Gorp person, but what I did do, like when we were prepping for trail, and you probably did this too, because it sounds like we had a shared life, which I know. Billy Ray, do you think people know that we're married?
I don't think people understand this.
Oh, I don't.
I think because I am a known homosexual, they assume that
Yeah.
I wouldn't be married.
And that you don't know anything about me. They would have maybe thought maybe that we're not married. But yeah, anyway.
Crazy.
But and I'm assuming your camp did as well, we would use like film canisters,
Mhm.
like just regular photography film for our spices to keep them dry.
Yeah,
And
yep.
so
Yep, I know exactly what you're talking about.
I got very good at spice blends for like, what am I going to zhuzh up? Because we would have our macaroni, our block of government cheese
Yep.
that we would have on the river for 10 days, unrefrigerated, and would eat the entire time without blinking.
Yep.
When I tell, like, we also had the bug juice container where there was like a gallon jug that everybody drank out of
Yep.
all day, every day. We were all just drinking out of the same thing. I almost never get sick, knock on wood. And honestly, it might be because I took in so
Oh,
many other people's germs as
yeah.
a child and young adult. I'm like impervious
I'm
now.
still that way, like weirdly. Like I'm one of those people. who will absolutely share a drink with someone and not think twice about it. Like
Yeah.
I just don't care. And it is because of that. It is because of camp. I will say the one thing that I got so worn out on at camp that I can't eat anymore is like cinnamon oatmeal. Um,
The
like
worst. Yeah.
I ate so much cinnamon oatmeal over the course of my life that now even the thought of oatmeal, unless it's like savory and zhuzhed up to the point that it's not even really oatmeal anymore, I can't do it.
Oatmeal's disgusting. I weirdly only like overnight oats, like a cold
Right.
oatmeal with like Greek yogurt and some fruit or something,
Oh,
but I hate a hot oatmeal. We always also when we're on trail, the TL, which was your trail lunch, every single day was like rye crisps, salami, again unrefrigerated, government cheese, unrefrigerated, granola, raisins. We had peanut butter and jelly like to put on the rye crisp,
yep.
but we literally like you had a TL every single day for lunch.
Yeah.
And I think of it now and I'm like,
Oh,
man, I really look at me. What a non-complainer. Really just
I was so spoiled at our cafeteria at camp.
that
And
was I was should say that was only when we were on
yeah,
trail. Yeah.
I was so spoiled. Like we had the most amazing head cook, and she was there almost the entire time that I was at the camp. The last 2 years I was there, she retired because she was having some health issues. But just the most amazing like home cooked food. Like it wasn't like fish sticks and like it was like
Oh,
legitimately like, oh, I'm making homemade mashed potatoes and gravy and I'm making a homemade meatloaf and I'm making a homemade this. And sure there were the occasional like square rectangle pizzas and things like that, but for the most part it was a pretty damn good cafeteria. And yeah, man, I don't want to stay on the subject. We could do a whole podcast just on camp life.
truly.
I am gonna close that part of the conversation with best representation of camp in a movie. Go.
Um, God, this is really hard. I've never seen anyone
No one's
do
gotten it right, in my opinion.
no one's gotten it right because the best ones are like Meatballs or Wet Hot American Summer, which are the best ones because they're like hilarious and specific, but they are not the camp
No.
experience. And part of it is, oh, again, like my last 2 years at camp, I was the sailing director. So like
Right.
like nobody's getting into like the weeds of the specificity or infrastructure of a camp. And the comedy ones are great, but like those are not the camps I went to because they also like we had arts and crafts, but we didn't have like a drama club because I don't know. So I'll just say I've not seen anyone do camp on screen, TV or film in a way that I was like, yep,
We agree there. I have yet to
yeah,
see that. I have yet to see that either. But I am glad to know that we have both of ourselves out there pushing camp to a whole new
yes.
generation of kids. And I've said it for years. I think if you're a kid and you want a
Oh,
well-rounded upbringing and like learn how to like exist in multiple worlds, go to camp. Because that
it's
was my first exposure to anything outside of my bubble.
it's the best for confidence, for amusing yourself, for being an independent person. And also my to this date, the highest compliment I can give to new people, and literally said this about someone recently. They would have been a great counselor. They would have been a great camp counselor.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I was hit or miss, but we won't get into that. It depended on my kids. So, you moved to LA. You
yeah,
moved to LA at a time when independent film is humming along.
humming
There's
indeed.
there's cool stuff going on, and you mentioned it, and I want to go because this is how we met. I do want to talk a bit about the Rest in Peace LA Film
Oh my
Festival,
God.
which was, sort of a staple of film here in Los Angeles for a number of years. We've still yet, in my opinion, found a festival in LA that has really taken over that mantle. I would imagine Slam Dance is hoping to be that sort of thing now that they have relocated here, but they're still very different vibes, very different kinds of festivals. And so I guess I want to ask you the question that has always been on my mind, and I don't know if we've ever actually discussed this in depth. And obviously, you don't have to say anything that you're not comfortable saying in regards to it because you did work there for a number of years and you still do work for Film Independent. What killed LA Film Festival? Like what? I mean, I know, it was all Film Independent is trying to save money, blah blah blah. I get that, but what in your mind, what is it that was the death knell?
I'll say it's incredibly hard everywhere. And if you run a festival, I mean, other than like, fine, Sundance, but even at Sundance, there's like the buzz titles everyone wants to see. And then there's like the discovery things. Most of the people there are more into that. But it is very difficult enticing even mildly interested and curious audiences into seeing true independent film.
Right.
And LA is a town of movie lovers. People move here to work in this industry, to be part of it. So you'd think, oh, it must be jam packed. But it also means every single week in Los Angeles, you can go to a premiere. You can so a friend of a friend will have something that they're showing. Like it's not as novel for that. And because it's a business town, and I'm guessing Tribeca has elements of this as well, like where life is going. So it's not a destination festival. Like you go to Sundance, you go and you watch 4 or 5 movies a day, and then you talk about like that's what you're doing. LA, even the people that came out, and I was guilty of this before I started working there. Like I would go to like one screening a festival,
Right.
like and that was the one. And so that I think was the hardest part of we had by the end, like one of the last years of LA Film Fest, and this was too much. We had 52 world premieres in 10 days. 52 world premieres. And when I tell you half of those had like names in them, we had to do a red carpet for every single one. Like they were whole.
Yeah.
And we did
Yeah.
everything we could to like do everything right by the filmmakers and the films. But like you can only have so many reviews, and those go down every year of how many films are getting reviewed. Or
Yeah.
and the audiences was a big thing. And some of them it was no problem, and some of them it was much harder. And sadly, a lot of that were the things that I found really exciting. Like for years and years, especially when David Anson was our creative art no, he was our artistic director. We had the most beautiful international showcase. We had 16 films out of competition, curated from around the globe. It was like exquisite. You would look at it and you're like, oh my God. Like it was like, oh, this is Cannes in Los Angeles. And that started getting smaller and smaller because people showed up less and less. And like
Right.
the last year of the festival, which was 2018, I had fought really hard because Peter Bogdanovich had premiered a documentary about Buster Keaton at Cannes, and I was like, I want the North American premiere of it because premiere status audiences don't super care, but it's a big thing
It's
for
a big deal for
festivals.
festivals.
Yeah. And I fought really hard and got that and was so excited. And Bogdanovich came and was like 104 years old. Like it was this whole
Yeah.
thing. And I was like, oh my God, it's about classic cinema. It's by this like old Hollywood staple. Girl, I was like texting people the day of. I'm like,
Yeah.
will you please come to this? I'll give you 10 tickets. Do you have 10 friends? Like, trying so desperately to just give away tickets by the time of the screening,
What's
which
interesting though,
was, yeah.
if that screening had taken place in, I don't know, pull out Cincinnati, Denver, and Peter Bogdanovich had been there, would have sold out.
No, yeah.
It's the fact that it's LA, and when he was still with us, like Peter Bogdanovich was speaking all the time. He was popping
Yeah.
up at events everywhere. I wonder how much of the decline of LA Film Fest do you think can be attributed to? Because I'll be honest, so I was only involved with LA Film Festival for its final year, unfortunately. So I
Oh,
was
yeah.
there. Yeah, that was the year that I was programming. And it struck me that so much of the festival was so spread out. It was at all of these different arc lights
Mm,
all over the city. And I inherently am biased. I am a big fan of footprint festivals. I love festivals where you can just walk everywhere you need to go. And especially in LA, I know a lot of people who just didn't go because of the fact that it was so spread around and you couldn't really, maybe you wanted to see one film in Sherman Oaks, but then you had to drive to Pasadena or somewhere to see the other film. And it just seemed like it was not really catered to like the LA lifestyle towards the end.
that's ironic because the whole reason we did that was because we had so many complaints when we were just in one place that like we were before we did the ArcLight, which was the last few years, and our hub was in Culver City.
Right.
And then we would have like a couple of screenings at like the Hollywood, the Sherman Oaks and the Santa Monica arc lights. The reason we did those is before then we had been at the Regal, which was downtown LA. And before then, for years, we were in Westwood. I started when we were in Westwood still.
Right.
And so many people, like when we were in Westwood, were like, I don't want to go that far west. I'm not going to anything. We're like, great. And then we were downtown, and people were like, oh, downtown. Blah, blah. And so then when we were in Culver City, which is, to be fair, in the middle, like it's
Yeah.
gettable for many people. And that's where like the filmmaker lounge, that where else the main stuff was. But then we had these offshoot screenings because people were always like, well, why can't you play something near me in Pasadena or whatever? Like,
Right.
great. We'll put some great stuff at all of these different ones. And then it does become this thing of there was no really finding the perfect balance of
Right.
those. And it's also you're sort of guessing which audience might want to see things in which place.
Well,
And
you're damned if you do, damned if you don't to some degree,
exactly.
right? Like you're
Yeah.
going to make whoever you're going to make happy, there's going to be an equal group of people who you're going to make unhappy because
Yeah.
you've either changed something that they're accustomed to or it's not exactly what they want it to be, right?
Yeah.
And film festival audiences are just like that in general, right? They want what they want, and if you go outside of that, they grumble.
Oh yeah. It's very funny. Like we just finished this year's Bentonville. It takes place in June. And someone afterwards, someone was like, oh, it was great. I heard so many reports that the movies were so much better this year. And I was like, well, I hear you passing that on like that's a compliment. But again, I've curated our films I've picked
Yeah.
them. So
Yeah.
you're being like, but I also genuinely, although find literally a bias because I picked them, I'm like, I think our films are the same standard of great as previous years. The one person you talked to happened to see a film they really liked, and we're like, all of these are wonderful, you know? So
Right. Right.
it's a whole but the other thing that I do think is important and why Film Independent was trying to make those changes all the time, the it's fabulous that festivals are about community. Like it's
Yeah.
not just, oh, what films do I want to show somewhere? I'm running 1,000
Right.
filters when I'm putting together any kind of program. And a huge one of those is like, oh, what, like for me in Northwest Arkansas, like what is going to be exciting and
Right.
fun for them to see? What's going to be a discovery that when it pops up again at the end of the year somewhere, they're like, oh, that was here a few months ago.
Yeah.
Or, or on the other hand, it's also like most of the festival, no, all of the festivals that I work at are mission driven in very similar ways, with an eye towards representation and perspective. And so I'm also like, oh, what viewpoints would I like to bring to Northwest Arkansas that I think they will appreciate
Yeah.
and gain something from. So anyway, the community part of it, I can be like, wow, these people and all,
Yeah.
but like those people are why we're doing it. So
It's a huge part, and I always get a little annoyed when I'm talking to somebody and they're like, and they know that I'm programming or running a festival, and it's like, oh, you get to watch movies all day. It's so dismissive, and it always has been, as if, and I've gotten into some pretty deep conversations about it, but it's like, no, it's a job. Like,
oh yeah.
yes, I'm watching movies, and yes, movies are inherently, to some degree, I guess, it's fun to watch a movie, but like anybody who has to sit down and watch 4 or 5 movies a day is going to end that day feeling like work. And I've always said a film programmer sort of has to be a time traveler, like because you certainly want to like focus on what's happening now, but you also have to have an eye to the future, like you said, like who are the up and coming filmmakers, what's going to be hot by the time these films drop. It's like you have to juggle so much, and people just from the outside looking in, and I get it to a degree, but it's like they don't understand it is work. It is a lot
Yeah.
of work to put on a festival, and you have to, like you said, be juggling so many balls at once about what you're programming, especially if you're a festival that's really focusing on representation and like new voices, something like Bentonville is doing. And I'm curious, knowing what you have to juggle, what is, as for you as a film programmer, what is the best way to get your attention when you're watching a movie? What is something that if a filmmaker is listening and like, what is that one thing that what's going to get Drea excited?
Mm. Well, first off, thank you. The idea, like everyone thinks they could be a programmer and it would be
Yep.
the easiest gig. Like it's worse than everyone thinks they could write a script, right? Like everyone is like, "Oh, you do what?"
I
It's
like movies. I can pick good
I could
movies.
totally do that. I'm like, well, first off, you probably couldn't because your taste is terrible. But the idea of it ties into like what would stand out for me because in addition, like, I go through all of our blind submissions of the people who are just like submitting hope, prayer, love the festival, like trying out. And then I'm also putting together tracking lists all year. And
Right.
the same is true at Sundance. I'll add for that. Like I think there's because I'm also a filmmaker and not to brag, I've been rejected by Sundance like before I
Same.
worked there. Like there's so it's not like, oh, I don't get it. I fully get it. I hate that part of it. But the idea, I think a lot of filmmakers, or sorry, yeah, I think a lot of filmmakers think that every festival, particularly the bigger ones and then on down, have like an agenda that is um that disadvantageous for those filmmakers that they're like, oh, we've made all these deals with the devil and you're not going to get in because you don't know blank or blank, where the reality is, as you would know, finding something in the blind submissions is the best feeling
Right.
in the world. And you're like, oh my God, because then you're like, I
Yeah.
basically made this movie. Like I started an entire section at Bentonville this year. We've always, like many regional festivals, looked for films from that area, but I started a whole new homegrown section of films, either shot in Arkansas and or made by directors from Arkansas, because I found two world premieres this year in the blind submissions
Yeah.
that both fulfilled that. And I was like, these are so good. I want to expand our slate and make sure we get them. Like, and
Absolutely.
and so for me, like what caught my eye on that, and they're very different films. They're called Abigail Before Beatrice and West of Greatness, if you want to look them up.
My buddy
But
Cassie Keats movie.
Cassie Keats, I love her so much,
Yep.
which is still so funny. It's so funny to me that you know her. But so yeah,
I
I
know
didn't.
all of the Florida State people. I somehow
Okay,
know all the Florida State crew.
somebody's gotta.
Somebody's
So
gotta.
so with that one, like that one started playing, and I was like, this is gorgeous. It was even before I saw that it shot in Arkansas. Like I like to know as little as possible going in because at the end of the day, like the the bulk of what I'm making my decision about is what's on the screen.
Right.
And so I like to watch things as blind as possible. It started immediately looked great, tonally consistent. It's like this woman who used to be in a cult, and there's this creepy atmospheric element, but it's not a full genre film. It had a femininity to it. It has a interesting structure. So it was just something that I was hooked immediately because I was like, oh, I'm in good hands. And no film is perfect. Like, but if
Yeah.
it's, oh, this is consistent, thoughtful, it's a whole piece. It's
Right.
not like a lot of indies, like you get midway through and you're like, oh man, they were like struggling to make their days. And
Yeah.
every conversation turns into like two shot over the shoulder,
Yeah.
two shot over, and instead of feeling artful or feeling like, oh, I'm so immersed, I'm not even
Right.
noticing all those things anymore. And so I mean, that's, I know, a really broad statement of like, oh, what'll get my attention is just a
Well,
really
no, but
well-made film. But
it's true. I mean, I always when I'm watching something, it's my main question I ask myself when I watch something is, did the filmmaker accomplish what they were trying to accomplish? And like you said, it doesn't mean that it's not shaggy. Like I
yeah,
have
yeah.
championed films that are
Oh
so
yeah.
shaggy and are and have no, there are very few films I look at and can call perfect, but it's like it's did they accomplish what they set out to accomplish?
Yeah.
And that could be something really major, it could be something really minor. And that's something that I look for when I'm watching something for sure. And it's like you said, I think people have this idea of like of a festival like Sundance and some other of these large festivals. And I always feel like, it's like it'd be like defending Pepsi or something, right? It's like they don't need me to defend them, but it's like, and I wouldn't anyway because I hate Pepsi, so I don't even know why I made that example. But no, people want to find exciting new indie films. Like,
Yeah.
yes, Sundance is going to play a certain number of films because they have to. They're Sundance. It's just part of that. But I've never once thought they're not actually looking for like the next generation. Like they couldn't survive if they weren't
No,
looking for the next generation of independent filmmakers.
I
And
think,
that's the exciting lens, right? Is like maybe
yeah,
this film isn't perfect, but my God, what are they going to do next?
they, I'll say like the team at Sundance, everyone cares so much. Like the weight of what it is to be a Discovery Festival of that import. It's every, like our programming meetings there are unlike any of the programming meetings like I run. I love an efficient meeting. I love clicking along. We have more pauses. There's more like, let's just sit on this for a moment. And people make these really articulate, impassioned pleas or maybe pointing out counter arguments or whatever,
Yeah,
but it is a very thoughtful, like it's a careful curation. And I honestly think if people understood the level of films that have A-level talent in front and behind camera that do not get into Sundance,
right.
they would not feel so convinced that it was all like, oh, it's all just industry plants anyway. I'm like, oh, many big films don't get in there. It's because that's the other part of programming is if I have like for Bentonville, I have 12 films in narrative competition, 12 films in documentary competition. So I'm looking at as like a playlist. So it's not just, oh, these are the 12 best narrative films I found. It's, oh, what's my range of tone of each film, of background of each filmmaker, who are the, like we were saying, like who are the different audiences these are speaking for. Like I don't want 12 great coming of age stories.
Right.
I could probably do that, but that's not what I'm going for. Or like I want a range of budgets. I want, so you're putting together this. That's why I'm like, you can't, to be dismissive of a program because like, oh, I saw one film and I wasn't crazy about it.
Yeah.
Well, I wish you'd loved it. I always want everyone a good experience, but also I hope that you were able to hear the filmmaker talk about it in the Q&A,
Yeah.
like to get a broader idea. I feel I've derailed a bit from your question, but
No,
you're, yeah.
I'm curious to get a little micro specific. I'm curious, what do you think about as a programmer? Because this is something I've struggled with a lot about themes. Because I
Mm,
know, there are a lot of festivals out there. They do different themes every year. Some of them do it really well. I'm thinking of something like True False. Like they do an excellent job of curating around a theme without it feeling stagnant or repetitive. But I do find that a lot of festivals that do, they'll choose a theme way before they even start getting the bulk of their submissions in. And it's like, how do you choose a theme if you don't know the types of films that you're
yeah.
getting? And I've always kind of veered away from like really specific themes. I mean, and I've said it before and I've said it like I treat programming sort of like I'm crafting a mixtape. Like
Exactly.
it doesn't have to be a theme. You're really riding on emotions and vibes and like trying to create like this emotional sort of like experience, right? And I feel like themes sometimes fly in the face of that. I'm just curious what your thoughts are.
I cannot, I imagine, I think if I was programming something to a theme, it would need to be like a small, like, oh, here's a screening series. Like to do a
Right.
whole festival that way, especially like what I like at Bentonville, like a regional festival or whatever else, seems like that's kind of a disservice unless I'm doing a bunch of them a year
Right.
because I don't know. So no, I feel like programming to a theme would be restrictive in a way that I wouldn't
Exactly.
enjoy. However, what I do like and what happens every year, themes emerge like that you'll look at
Yep.
because indie film particular is so reflective of where we are culturally, politically, and if we're getting things and it's kind of, oh, this was made, this is this is coming through post production a year after this big happening, and the art is now being reflective of that in all these different ways. So then my theme is like, wow, we get a whole lot of stuff about social alienation these days,
Right.
or oh, there's a lot of stuff about like people not taking up arms, but like people feeling a call to action, or people like upending their worlds, or whatever it is. Those things I'm interested in as more of a talking point of like, oh, there's these interesting things that unite films that you may not think were that you might think were totally disparate stories. And then, in fact, oh, there's actually a theme that unifies them. But I can't imagine it wouldn't, it would be fun, like I said, like as a series of like,
Right.
oh, I'm going to do
Right.
5 films about blah, blah, blah. Like, great, that's fun, but that's not a film festival. Like,
And that's also why you have like sections in a festival, right? Where you
right,
can
right.
focus on something like, I did that in my genre festival. We would have certain sections that
Yeah.
like, and that's perfectly fine. Like I think it's
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
okay to have sections. That's what they're there for, so you can highlight something. But it's when, yeah, I just find whenever I'm at a festival that has really worked hard to craft a theme, it just comes across as forced. And it
Yeah.
doesn't feel organic to what is happening in film, sort of as a whole, which changes, so, like if you run, I guarantee you, if you ran a year-long submission process for a festival, the films you get the first quarter and the films you get in the last quarter are going to be so totally
Oh,
different
absolutely.
because so much changes in that short span of time.
Absolutely. I think I think sorry, the last theme thing, like you're saying, the sidebar idea.
Hmm.
Like I remember again when David Anson was at LA, we had a sidebar, but it was a theme that came up organically because he had seen 2 films about young women in their sexuality, these
Right.
different international pieces. And then it was like, well, if we could find a third, that would be a really interesting whatever. But yeah, I think in general, whatever. I'm landing where you landed. We're in total
Right.
agreement. This is why our marriage has lasted as long as it has,
I
truly.
know it's still going
Yeah.
strong. Let's see if
Yeah.
it keeps going after this question. I'm kidding.
Oh,
No, but I'm curious. I kind of want to go back because, so much about, I moved to Los Angeles in 2014. So I haven't been here. And
mm.
keep in mind, there's a 2-year period where I lived in Seattle. So even just since I've been here, so much has changed in this town. I mean, just it's night and day compared to when I first got here. And yes, there's a lot of reasons for that. The pandemic, the strikes, like just the rise of streaming, which was still relatively young when
Mm-hmm.
I moved out here. I'm curious as someone who has just kind of been entrenched in the independent film world since you've been here, like what are the biggest changes that you've noticed? And do, do you have any hope?
Oh, well, that's loaded. I think a lot of the changes I've noticed has also been from my perspective as a producer,
Mhm.
because I've made a handful of feature films and 3 of them shot in LA. And that used to be very common, and it's such a rarity now at any
Yeah,
budget level. People shooting here, like the movie capital of the world, and like to actually have production in Los Angeles seems increasingly difficult and the numbers show that. So that's been a big change because I think there and with the grain of salt, a lot of this is also like I have aged through those years. So like it may be that people are still doing renegade stuff like we did when I was in my 20s, and
yeah,
I'm just not privy to it anymore. But I do think a lot of that has changed, and it's that whole the structure of film festivals and indie film, that idea of how like sex lies and videotape changed everything because it took advantage of how like consumer products made filmmaking more accessible and more DIY, stripped down or whatever. And there's been so many variations of that,
right.
both from like I mean literally we've had Oscar nominated films shot on iPhones at this time,
Yep.
and also on like the post-production side, on like what you can manage with both editing but visual effects. Like there's just so many things that make that kind of stripped down DIY element more possible. But I feel like when it was harder to do, people were fine with it feeling grainy and sloppy and
Yeah.
like more like cult stuff or whatever. And now it's I feel people the indie stuff that I've seen are like, oh, I want to do this stripped down, but I want it to look like a Zack Snyder film. Like there's a different aim for it rather than, oh, I'd like to be the next, Cronenberg or Soderbergh or some other Spielberg. But so I was so excited. I had my Bergs of 3. But yeah, I think that's
Not
been a
Peter Berg. He didn't make the cut.
sorry, Peterberg. Sorry, go back to your war shooting. I actually like Peter Berg's stuff, but so I think that there's a different feeling when it comes to like what feels experimental or edgy or
Yeah.
because it's just it's changed. Like in the past, what you had to do to pull that off
Yeah.
required such a different level of commitment than now. So I think those are the things that have come across on as a viewer of a lot of these. And it's also like speaking, harkening back to how many things I see hundreds of films a year that like no one else will ever see. Like
Right.
just that small audiences will that may or may not like have their own distribution or small streaming and so when those numbers grow every single year. Like at Slam Dance, they grew every year. At Sundance, they still grow every
Right.
year. Like the number of films being made, and it's tricky because I'm like I think to be a good programmer, you have to be an optimist. You
Right.
have to want each thing you're watching to be good.
Yeah.
If you don't, you're wasting your time, the filmmaker's time. Like it's that's a bummer. And but to do that means it's dispiriting when you start something and your first thought is, oh, I wish they hadn't spent their money and time on this. Like either they had like cooked it further or had finessed something further or had
Yeah.
like done it in a different way and you're like, oh man, I know you put so much time and effort into this and it sounds terrible and your actors are not good. Like it's
Yeah.
there's just so many things on the level of I that's why when people are like, "Oh, do you watch a lot of bad films?" I'm like, "Well, I would never call them bad films because that's so disrespectful
Right. Right.
to like the because it's a community that makes films, right? It's collaborative, and so
It's
it's
true. Every
yeah,
film is someone's favorite.
yeah,
There's
and
someone.
right. So there's someone who likes it, but there's also the level of films that I think are coming up short on a submission level for festivals that is a level of like we always call it hug and release of
Yeah.
no, I thank you for your service. This
Right.
is not going to be a fit here. But I wouldn't call it a bad film. But that's why when people are like, what's the worst film? I'm like, oh, I've seen plenty of bad films, but I wouldn't call these festival ones that, even though if you watched it as an outsider, you'd be like, what is this? This is
Well,
not good.
again,
Yeah.
to me, it comes back to did they accomplish what they set out to accomplish? And sometimes that can mean like based within the confines of their means, right? Like, were
Sure.
you able to do what you wanted to do to the best of your ability with the means that you had to do it? That can never be bad as far as I'm concerned. It may not be for me. It may not be something that's going to play Sundance or a top mid-tier festival, but it doesn't mean it's bad. It just
Yeah.
means that they came up short in certain areas and that's okay. We all do. Look, I made a feature film several years ago. I can look at that film now and tell you everything that I
Oh,
did wrong.
okay, first off, again, every film I have, I'm like, oh, I'm so proud of our team. I have nothing but notes on the movies
Oh,
I made.
sure.
But there is something different of, and this is where it sounds snobby, but like it's the same thing. Like if you watch Project Runway or you watch something like a design show, and there is an element of it that's like taste level. And
Mhm.
so to me, of the did they execute what they wanted to? Is also tricky because beyond like economy of means that you're talking about, it's also what's their taste level. Like if they
Sure.
executed what they wanted to, but I think what they want to make is pretty generic and not really adding anything to like an artistic or cultural conversation,
Right.
then that's also sort of dead in the water.
But that
And
did
it's
but that differs from programmer to programmer really, right? Like
truly
that's part of the whole like
that's
what
those are the arguments you're making. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Like because, I mean, and that's what's great about, to me that's what's great about curation in general and which is why I am hopeful that we are moving more towards a more of a respect of curation than I feel like we've had. Now it's like you go onto Netflix, you go onto these monoliths, and it's just endless films, and you're scrolling and doom scrolling for hours, and you can't find anything to watch because it's so perfectly curated to you that they can't find anything that interests you.
It's something new. Yeah.
And so it's like I'm hoping that we're getting back to a place where that is respected more. And because I do think it should be, I do think, it's the same thing with film critics, right? Like we all typically find those one or two film critics that we most
Mm.
closely align with. And it doesn't mean that we shut off other voices. It just means that, like, for me and a lot of people, it was Roger Ebert. Like, I loved him as a critic. I didn't agree with him all the time, but I respected his opinion, even if I didn't agree with him. Same with curation. In my, you find those curators, you find those programmers that are like on your wavelength, and you latch onto them. And to me, I latch onto them. It doesn't matter what festival they're working for, right? If they're working for
Yeah.
Sundance or they're working at St. Louis International or like wherever, like I do typically tend to follow those programmers and what they're programming.
Yeah. I think that is such a good point that that taste level is something that differs from every person because what we do is nothing but subjective.
Right.
And it's like it's that, we all have more than our Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hours. Like you can put in the time, you can have a grand breadth of knowledge to help get everything in order in terms of how you're filtering or what you're comparing it to, your knowledge of what's being currently made and has come before, but it's also everything is through one person's. And the silver lining of that for filmmakers is you can never take anything too personally as a result of like,
Exactly.
oh,
Exactly.
that particular group of people. And because they're also putting so many filters on that thing of like, you might have made a film that half that room adored,
Right.
but they had another film kind of similar.
Exactly.
And the reason it ended up eking out is because of XYZ, which is nothing you could have changed, brought to the table, whatever. So it's it's so hard because I think a lot of filmmakers are, or sorry, festival programmers are people who, if you ask them, like, oh, I don't want, well, I say this as a screen drafts person too, but like the idea of judging people's art
Yeah.
is kind of an anathema to me. And yet is the crux of what I do for my
Same.
career.
Yeah.
So it's you have to just know, like, I think most programmers take it so seriously
They do.
of the what they're being tasked with and like the respect required. So
I think the worst day for any programmer is the day they have to send out rejection emails. I don't think that
I
has
hate
ever
it.
changed. It's the worst day. It never gets any easier. And it's awful because, there are going to be so many people that see that rejection as this like grand statement on their like ability to create art. And it's so not that. And it's just so you want to reach out to them all. You can't, but like you want to reach out to them all individually and be like, it's not, don't take this personally. Like it is not to be taken personally. But I was a young filmmaker once. It's hard not to take it personally. Like now
Oh
I've gotten
God,
to
of
the point,
course.
like now we've got a film on the circuit right now, and I've got a lot more experience and I've been programming for 16 years now. So it's like when we don't get into a festival, I'm like, you know what? We probably just weren't the right fit for him this year. It's okay.
Yeah.
Like it probably just didn't work out this year. Or it's like, or you can, as a programmer and certain festivals, you're like, oh, okay, we weren't filmed in this area. They're probably got more films that were that took, like, there's so many reasons why films don't get accepted that go beyond good, good, not good, like blah, blah, like,
Right.
yeah,
And you are welcome to just assume it's because we have terrible taste.
that's
Go ahead.
absolutely valid. And look, we have all programmed films that in hindsight, we can look back at and say, maybe we should have made another choice. We've all
Oh,
got
sure.
those. We've all got those. Like, I'm not going to, certainly not going to name any, but like, we've all got those films that in hindsight, we probably should have given it to someone else who would have been a bit more, let's say, appreciative.
Yeah. Well, it's twofold. One, there's films where, because you are filling in the blanks a lot. And that is the point where, like I said, I try not to, because most everything comes through Film Freeway. And so I will primarily just watch the film. And then if I'm responsive to it, I'll dig into their director bio, the
Exactly.
statement, the cover letter, that sort of thing. Because that's when I'm filling in those blanks or trying to, of, is this intentional or am I projecting depth to this thing or just picking up on nuance that's not there? And sometimes the director's statement will nod to that. So I think those things are important. But I also think the idea of God, wait, what were you just saying? I had something else I was like, this would be helpful to know.
You lost
The
your you lost your train of
I
thought.
lost my train of thought. Where'd it go? Anyway, I do think the main thing that's what it was. That you said the films that you're like, maybe I shouldn't have played that. And
Right.
generally it's because I erred in thinking, oh, they knew what they were doing and that tone was intentional. And then because it wasn't, other viewers didn't see it the same way I did
Right.
because I was like, oh, blah, blah. But again, everything goes through like conversations and stuff.
Yeah.
But the other side of it is also, of course, the films that you're like, oh, I'm an idiot. Oh, should have done that one. I have like one big shining example of that, but I actually befriended several filmmakers along the way. Like when I was at Slam Dance and running the team, I would reach out to people who submitted and didn't get in, be like, I want you to know I love your film. I'm so sorry I don't have good news for you. And I have better relationships with some of those filmmakers now than I do with the ones that we
Yeah.
programmed. So,
Well, I have a pretty recent example. I'm not going to mention the film's name, but it was my first year programming for Make Believe, which was my genre festival. And so, it's your first year, you're trying to get world premieres, you're trying to get anything that's going to get you some more exposure than a first year festival would probably normally get, right?
mhm,
And I programmed a film that was certainly fit it was a genre film, it certainly fit in. It had a known director, it had
mhm.
some known cast to it. And we had the opportunity to world premiere this film, and I watched it, and it wasn't perfect. I had some issues with it, but I was like, for a first year festival, let's go for it. And we got it. Now, I didn't know that they were going to be making tweaks to it between the time that I
Yes.
programmed it and the time that it played. And this hour and 45-minute thriller became a 2 hour and 23-minute thriller that was, again, I'm not going to say it was bad, but I'm certainly going to say it was a challenge. And do I regret programming it? Probably, yes, only because it changed very much from the film that I initially
Yeah.
saw. But it's one of those things where it's like all you got is hindsight at that point. Like, you've invited it, it's in the festival. Like, there's nothing you can do.
That is such a good point, especially at a festival with any premieres. The difference between the edit that you program
Right.
and then the edit they end up showing. And sometimes because you're just working on faith that like, oh, this is going to continue in the direction I see for it. And then other you saw wrong or whatever. And that's always a leap of faith when you're doing world
Right.
premieres because I mean, anyone who programs, you watch so many things at like different levels of post production of like that the if the edit's not locked, let alone the fact that like, oh, there's composite shots not in, or it doesn't have sound yet, or like the score is temp, whatever. But yeah, that's such a leap of faith. I've absolutely had that before.
Well, my final question for you, Drea, is a very easy one, and for you, it should be specifically easy. Um, what is a movie that you want to recommend to people right now? It can be in theaters, it can be streaming, it can be in
Ooh.
festivals. Like, what is the film that they need to make a point to see however they can as soon as possible?
Okay, I'll say this. So there is a film that came out last weekend. It was a Sundance title. And if you're like, oh, I'm interested in these sort of um uh I want this kind of tangly thought provocation in my filmmaking. I recommend you check out Life After from director Reed Davenport. Reed's incredible. He won the Truer Than Fiction Award, the Spirit Awards. It's I think it's available both theatrically and streaming right now,
Yeah.
but it is basically he's a disabled director who got into finding out about this woman in the 80s who was also disabled and was seeking the right to die, and it became this whole national debate. And then she sort of disappeared after being on like Time magazine, like all these things. So he wanted to find out what had happened to her, and then is also exploring the kind of Right to Die issue from a disabled artist lens, but also in broader ways than that. And he's such a deft filmmaker. And every 15 minutes, I was like, well, I'm steadfast now. This is how I think about this issue. And he would just gently introduce another perspective, and you're like, oh, I'm flip flopping. This is how I think about this. Anyway, I think that
It's so interesting.
he's
I
an
j-
incredible documentarian.
I just reviewed this film for this very site, Cinepunx. I posted a
Shut
review
up.
last week for Life After, and it's very interesting because I did recommend the film. I gave it a positive recommendation, but I did have issues with it, and I did, but
Yeah.
they were more stemmed from the fact of like we just sort of fundamentally disagree, I think, on the thesis. And I thought the filmmaking was incredibly well done, and he's such a thoughtful interviewer, and just the process you go on with him is so interesting. Um, I think where we differed in our analysis was I didn't feel the back and forth like you did.
Oh, really?
I felt like I felt like through the whole film he pretty much stuck to his guns in terms of what he personally felt, which I think was totally valid. I just happened to be on the other side of that debate, I think. But I was so captivated by,
Interesting.
because I knew nothing about that woman, and her story was fascinating.
Yeah.
And so it was interesting to, like, you know, hear about a news story that was so like in the headlines and then just disappeared to the point that no one knew what happened to this poor woman.
Yeah.
It was like that was really, sad
Oh,
as well.
it was such a smart sort of narrative construct to make her and the mystery around her kind of at the center of it. But I definitely felt that like it started and you hear her things and I'm like, oh, let people do this. Like I was all on
Yeah.
that. And then he introduces other ideas and I was like, no, don't. Oh, that's gonna hurt these people. What? I didn't even know that. And then it came back again. Like I felt I
Yeah.
had a much different,
Yeah.
yeah.
But you know what?
But again, that's the kind of like festival, that's a discovery film when you're
Exactly.
talking about like when I'm looking through things, if you haven't heard of that film, it probably did not bounce across your desk. Like, so yes, I say Life After. There you go.
Yeah, and the film that I'll recommend very quickly, you may have already seen this as well. It was also a film that I just reviewed for this site last week. It is a Lithuanian drama called Drowning Dry. And
Mm-mm.
this is from filmmaker Lorena Sparesa, and it is their new feature, their second feature. They did Pilgrims back in
Okay.
2021. And it is a film about two sisters who are on this getaway with their respective husbands and their families. And an incident happens, and the way the film is structured, it's if you've seen Moonlight, if you remember Moonlight, how the first section is all about his relationship with Mahershala Ali, then the second, Mahershala Ali is just gone, and you don't know why at first. You learn it's similar. Like the
Okay.
first section happens right before this incident happens, and then you flash forward, and you don't know what's up, and you have to figure it out slowly as the filmmaker reveals it. I'm not going to spoil anything. I think the title of the film is probably a bit of a spoiler in itself. It's called Drowning Dry, which was something I also did not know was a thing. So this film
Yeah.
turned me on to that, which is horrifying. But it's a wonder. I'm a big fan of like Lithuanian cinema right now. I just think there's an amazing stuff coming out of there, and this is a really interesting film for folks who want to check it out. It's playing in theaters now too in limited release. So uh,
I'm sure it will be submitted to the Spirit Awards. I'll catch it
I'm
then.
sure it will. Life After and Drowning Dry, both films you should check out from two very respected programmers.